Hello, today we'll be combining binary operations with enums. First of all, we'll create an enum. Now for the elements inside, I'll place fire. And I'm going to use binary values. So we start with 1. Earth will be 2, which is 1, 0. Ice will be 1, 0, 0, which is 4. And finally water. This is going to be the number 8. As you can see, all of them are powers of 2. We'll see why we pick these numbers later. Let's also create a class. Let's call it weapon. The weapon has a name. And some attributes. The type is going to be elements. And I'm going to create a constructor. I'll use the init function. Here's the description. Imagine it like a constructor. So we can create our own parameters for this one. I'm going to say p underscore name, p for parameter. It's going to be a string. And p attributes, which is going to be elements. And then I just set the name and the attributes. Okay, so now we can create a weapon. Blitz fans recognize this word, Zanpakuto. And we say weapon.new. Create a new object. And we pass 2 arguments. So let's say Ryujin Chaka. And it controls fire. Let's create another one. Hyorin Maru. This is the one that Toshiro has, and it controls size. Okay, now I'm going to write a loop to display a message for every weapon we have here and what it controls. So, for Zanpakuto, I'm going to create a temporary array. We are going to start with an array of strings for the attributes. Now for every element in elements.values, remember we can use an enum like a dictionary. So the values is going to be an array that contains these numbers. If zanpakuto.attributes and element, we append to the array. Now we need to get the name. Now we'll use the find key method to get the name of the element. And we pass the value to find its key. In this case, each value corresponds to only one key, so it's fine to use this. So let's see for the first weapon. The element is fire, so we have 1. And for each element, the first element that we're checking is fire. So this returns 1, and if 1 is the same as saying if true, which means that we add the key of fire inside the array. So now the attribute array contains the string fire. We move on to the next element, jumpacuto.attributes, it is 1, and the next element is earth, which is 2. So we have 1, 0, and this is 0, 1. 0 and 1, 0, and 1 and 0, 0. If 0, which is the same as saying if false. So we are not going inside the if. And then continues for all of the elements like ice and water. And they're all going to be false. Now let's create a message. We'll say jumpacuto.name controls string attributes. And then we just print the message. Make sure it's inside the for loop. Ryujin Jaka controls fire, Yorin Maru controls size. Now let's say we want to write this properly instead of having brackets. So let me fix this real quick. If attribute is empty, that means that the sword doesn't have any elements to control. We just append to message nothing. Else, for I in attribute.size minus 1, we'll be using the last element separately. Appends attribute I. Now those are the string methods, and we are looking for to lower, and then we add the comma. Now what this is going to do is that if we have a sword that controls, let's say, fire, ice, and earth, the attribute size is 3, and this number is going to be 2. I is 0 and 1. And it will add the comma. And that is because for the earth we don't want to add the comma, we want to put a period. So after this loop is done, it means that we've done everything but the last element. Append attribute dot back. This is a method that gives us the last element of the array. And then we add the period. I also have to say to lower. And now we get Ryujin Sakan controls fire, Kyorin Maru controls size. As you can see, in both cases we have one element. This loop is for I in 0, so it never happens. And we go directly here. We can also have a sort with multiple elements. And this is why we pick binary values that only have the digit 1 appear once. In our example, we have 4 elements, therefore 4 digits. If the digit is 1, we control the corresponding element. Imagine this like having 4 booleans in the weapon class. Instead of that, we have attributes. It can be one of these numbers, indicating we control one of these elements. However, we can set more than one digit to 1. That means the weapon controls 2 or more elements. So let's write a method to add elements. Okay, so we have the weapon. And we say weapon.attributes. And now we are using the OR operator. Let's say we have a sword that controls fire and ice. And we also want it to control earth. We can just say OR 0010. The result is 0111. Now with that out of the way, let's take the second Zanpakuto. Now Hyorimaru, except for ice, it also controls water. So we can say add elements Zanpakuto 2 and elements.water. Okay, and now the attributes of Hyorimaru are going to be 1100. So if I run this now, Hyorimaru controls ice, water. Now for the second Zanpakuto, we have attributes, which is 1100, and the element. Now for fire, we get 0. So we don't care about this. Now let's move on to the ice, which is 0100. And as you can see, the result will be 0100, which is the number 4. So if 4 is the same as saying if true. Remember, if the number is not 0, it's always true. So it adds ice to the array. And then the same thing for the water. This one becomes 1000, which is the number 8. It's not 0. So we run this command. After this, we go down here. Now we have 2 elements, so it's for I in 1, attribute 0 to lower, comma. This is ice. And then we get out of the loop, take the last element, and add the period. There it is. So we know how to add an element. Now the question is how to remove it. We give a weapon and an element, and we say weapon.attributes is equal to weapon.attributes XOR elements. And this can be simplified. Let's take our first Zanpakuto, Ryujin Chaka. Sorry, remove. And we remove the fire. As you can see now, we say that Ryujin Jaka controls nothing. And that makes sense because we had this XOR this. 1 XOR 1 gives us 0. And then 0 XOR 0 gives 0. 0, 0 gives us 0. And the same here. We can also add multiple elements at once. We just use the OR operator. Let's say that Hyorin Maruk also controls Earth. I can create a more complex element by combining those two. Hyorin Maruk controls Earth, Ice, Water. Basically, it's 0, 1, 0, 0, or Water, 1, 0, 0, 0. I'll use parentheses for this. 0, 0, 1, 0. This one is the Earth. The OR operator doesn't need the parentheses. 0 or 1 or 0, 1. 1 or 0 or 0, 1. 0 or 0 or 1, 1. 0 or 0 or 0. Now we added two elements with one command. And of course we can also use it for the remove elements. Let's remove those two. Hyorin Maru controls size. 1110 XOR. Water or Earth. This gives us 1010. It's water and Earth. 1 XOR 1, 0. 1 XOR 0, 1. 1 XOR 1, 0. And 0 XOR 0, 0. So we get ice. Okay, that was it. In the next video, we'll talk about exponentiation and logarithms. Till next time.